A-League Access brought to you by Barry Plant.
Hello and welcome to A-League Access, the show that talks about all things A-League and everything to do with football in Australia. My name is Bernd Merkel, and joining me tonight to talk about all things A-League are George Grosios.
Hi, Bernd.
And John Alamanos.
Good evening, George and Bernd.
Well, we have arrived at the tail end of the season where we will find out who will be the champions of the 2021 season. But before we talk about the grand final, let's talk about the A-League season in general first. The highs, the lows and the surprises. George, your thoughts?
Well, a high for me has been Sydney FC making another grand final. It's an opportunity for Steve Corica to make history as the first manager to win 3 straight titles. So, fantastic performance by Sydney FC again, playing off against Melbourne City. We'll talk about Melbourne City in a moment, but Sydney FC, a great team, great organisation. They came runners-up during the home and away season, but fought their way through to the grand final.
You're surprised, John, how well they played this season?
With Sydney FC? Not really, no. The amount of depth they have in the squad is just unbelievable. You take 3 or 4 players out and they've got ready-made replacements in the bench. You've got young players such as Bum Johan, Patrick Wood, just to name a couple. Yeah, it just continues on the legacy that Steve Corica is trying to weave. You know, back to back, as George just said, you know, a 3-peat. Yeah, they're going to be tough to stop. So, yeah, they're just continuing on their merry way.
Yeah, Central Coast also captured my attention and my interest this season. They were wooden spooners 3 years in a row. Alan Stacic comes along, finally gets them into a final series. So terrific performance by Central Coast, and they've made a finals campaign after so many years.
A bit surprising for me that they lost this elimination final at home, so I would have thought they were the favourites. But let's talk about their opponents, or in general the 2 still newbies at the A-League, so MacArthur FC and Western United. Maybe we start with MacArthur first season. So unfortunately they lost in the semi-finals against Melbourne City, but what do you make out of their first performance?
Well, a great debut for them, to be fair. I mean, they were cobbled together very, very quickly. It was a difficult stage for them, trying to get players, trying to get backroom staff. So Ante Milicic has done a magnificent job, and they couldn't have picked a better person and a better strategist for such a young debutant side. So well done to the entire organisation for the way they've started this inaugural season in their club history.
Absolutely, John.
Yeah, MacArthur, yeah, they've had a honeymoon season this season, the same as Western United last season. They had their honeymoon season last season, made it to the last 4, very close to making the grand final, but this season the honeymoon is over. They started very well. They've been amongst the chasing pack from the start, but unfortunately it ended with their season derailing, losing 8 straight matches. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with MacArthur next season. Yeah, Derbyshire had a fantastic season, scoring 14 goals.
What do you make it up to? Because why was Western United now struggling suddenly in the second season? As you said, guys, they made it to the final last year in their first season. Quite a decent squad, a very experienced coach. What do you think, George?
It's just been an inexplicable downturn in fortunes. They were riding high early in the season. They notched up some terrific victories, and then the wheels have literally fallen off. John, as you mentioned, in the last 8 weeks now, they'll be forensically poring over the hows and the whys. It's meant that, unfortunately, Mark Roldan has departed the club. Mm-hmm. That opens the door for another, hopefully, Australian coach to take over the reins. Did their squad lose faith in the coaching panel? Did egos clash? Were players played out of position? They're the sorts of things that I'm sure the club will look over. But it was a terrible ending to what was early days, a promising season.
Absolutely. And we stay in Melbourne. I think the biggest disappointment this season, John, Melbourne Victory, right? I mean, the second time in a row that they are missed the finals, and really by far. What's your thoughts on this really, again, devastating performance?
You got to go back 2 or 3 seasons to 2019, the departure of Muscat. As far as I'm concerned, it started from there. And when he left, there's been at least 3 coaches tried. Carlo Salvecchio at the start, then Grant Brebner, or it was Marco Kurtz beforehand. He was much touted from Adelaide. Unfortunately, didn't quite deliver in the hype. So there's been instability from that level. I suppose you've got to go higher up the organisation, but it comes down to budgets, how the coach interacts with the various boards and what the board expects from the coach. So there's something there, and it filters down to the playing group. So there's been some sort of a spiral caused by Muscat departing, and they lost their rhythm there.
George, do you think that with Muscat that it all started then, or there were people that said it already was when he was in his ending time? We remember his last match was this devastating loss against Sydney, right?
I do, and unfortunately they hadn't actually prepared for the future in terms of talent coming through. They were always relying on ready-made players, and you've seen some of their promising young players have gone to other clubs looking for further opportunities. I refer to players like Scott Galloway, for instance. He's gone to Melbourne City and actually starred this season. So they haven't done a particularly good job in recent years, Victory, promoting youth. And youth are basically the backbone of your club. They're the future. So that's an area of concern for Melbourne Victory, which they need to quickly turn around. And of course, you've had instability with coaches and boardroom unrest.
Now Popovic coming in.
Yes, so that'll be a great move for Melbourne Victory. He's a proven coach. He's got the runs on the board. We know what a fantastic job he did with Western Sydney, getting them to
Champions League,
winning the Asian Champions League.
2014.
So that was an amazing effort against some fantastic Asian sides with bigger budgets.
And he was successful in Perth as well, right?
Yes.
So he has this kind of proof that he knows how to make a team successful at the A-League. But you were just mentioning the youth players, and I must say my 2 favorite teams from that aspect this season, Brisbane and Adelaide. Particularly if you see Brisbane, Warren Moon, who he brought on the pitch, just Alex Parsons to name one player. We had Jamie Young with us as well as the kind of, I guess, leader there in goals. What do you think about Brisbane season, John?
Brisbane season, they've been very successful. Their defence was absolutely awesome, as referenced on that show, the second stingiest defence in the league. It's a bit of a shame they couldn't finish off their good work up the pitch, you know. They were 7th in the overall goals scored, but they're on the right trajectory. Warren Moon, since taken over from Robbie Fowler, has really built something. He's built foundations, and if they can manage to land a premium striker in the mould of McLaren, Bobo and Derbyshire, I think they'll be serious contenders next season, no doubt about that. So the foundation's been set.
Yeah. George, Adelaide, the other team, in my opinion, that brought, a lot of new young talent. Unfortunately, they lost their semi-final in Sydney, but I would say the future looks bright for Adelaide.
It does, and they acquitted themselves really well during the finals campaign. Unlucky not to get through.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but as we said, step by step, and we will be excited. Of course, we have missed one team, but we will talk about that in the second segment, Melbourne City. So thank you both. We just need to take a quick break, but we will be back to talk about the grand final soon. Welcome back to A-League Access. The grand final will see Melbourne City play Sydney FC. George, what are your thoughts about this game? We talked a lot about Sydney FC, so maybe now Melbourne City first.
what a fantastic season they've had. They've won their first ever Premier's Plate, and Patrick Kaznorbo, full credit to him, first season in the position, has just been a fantastic appointment. And it's a repeat of last season's grand final, so Melbourne City looking to turn the tables, and they've certainly got the playing squad. They've got some fantastic depth, and they'll go into this final, this grand final with a lot of confidence. They had a very good win against Macarthur in the semi-final, so all things are pointing towards, I believe, a Melbourne City victory.
Let's see, John. Do you agree?
My heart says Melbourne City, but my head says maybe otherwise. Look at the depths of both teams, Sydney versus Melbourne City. I think the international break has affected Melbourne City more.
Yeah, that's what I would say as well.
Judging by their last 3 matches after the Premier's Plate, their form has kind of taken a bit of a turn for the worse. But in the context of wrapping up the Premier's Plate, it's kind of expected. But yeah, I just wonder how they're going to replace Jamie McLaren's goal scoring power against the stingiest defence in the league. So that's one practical consideration. Melbourne City, with Ninkovic, for example, Bomyahan stepped into his place with the strikers. Patrick would come in and gave them all that pace and all that kick. Melbourne City, I'm not sure if they can call on depth as easily as Sydney. So, yeah, there's a lot of question marks there in terms of can they match them toe to toe. I mean, the first 11 in a perfect world would be, I think, more than a match for Sydney, as evidenced by their wins against them earlier in the season. But in these current circumstances, I think the depth of Sydney might be just enough. I hate to call that, but it might be just enough. I hope my expectations are exceeded. I thought I'd just keep them down for a moment.
You're putting a lid on it.
Yeah, well, I'm putting a lid on it. That's my take.
Yeah, but I mean, a few factors from mine. I think for Melbourne City, it might definitely play a role that they have been in the finals last year already. So there is this kind of experience there. Patrick Kaznorbo, in my opinion, really outstanding. If you see how motivated, how engaging he is there as a coach, but still, sometimes you have these kind of coaches out there that don't know where their limits are. So still a kind of coach where I would say, yeah, I could see myself being coached by someone like him. On the other end, what I was really impressed by was the semi-final from Melbourne City against MacArthur, because you didn't know, okay, the international, the Socceroos gone, how will they compete against MacArthur? And was really an outstanding performance of the young kids also coming in. So that gives me the hope. And I also would say, as an objective football supporter, that Melbourne City was the best team in the whole regular season, so they definitely deserve the title, right? I know that's how the system is played here, right? You have the grand final, anything can happen, but I would say if Melbourne City deserves it, we will see. As you both said, Sydney might have the bigger depth, but probably also with the crowds that might get a little bit of an impact there as well, right? I mean, we were missing them the whole season.
Well, we've missed it the whole season, and Melbourne City thrived with crowd support. Just turning our attention to that performance against Macarthur in the semi, they've unearthed some terrific youngsters, Melbourne City. Mark Otilio, you know a lot about him, John, having followed Melbourne City closely all year. Great youngster, showed real composure in a very, very pressure situation.
And coming from Sydney.
Yes, that's the irony. So performed really, really admirably. So Melbourne City are doing a great job promoting and developing their youth. Sydney, you touched on about their depth. It's ridiculous that Sydney can bring in people like Adam Lafondre, Bobo, with people like Kostas Barbarousis in there and Alex Bomyahan. It's just scary depth, but I honestly believe that Melbourne City have the composure and the nous to overcome that. And that's something that Melbourne City have lacked in past seasons, particularly in last year's grand final. They were overawed to an extent, but I think this season they've overcome that.
And we always talk about who's becoming the champions, but then Champions League. We haven't talked about that before, but there has been the announcement that the Australian teams drop out of the Asian Champions League. Your thoughts about that, John?
Yeah, that is very, very unfortunate. Australia made the decision to pull out the Australian teams, being Sydney FC, Brisbane and Melbourne City. There's no two ways about it. The players would be disappointed. The Australian League would be disappointed. The clubs would be disappointed. The coaches would be disappointed. It's almost a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for many of those players to showcase their talent across the best of the best. You know, you go to the European leagues, their highlight is the UEFA Champions League. Here, this is our highlight, the Asian Champions League. So
it should be, right? But the Australian teams are not really that. Since the Wanderers, we mentioned that before, 2014, and then nothing. I think we had once or twice a team in the round of the last 16, and that's it, right?
Strangely, though, the competition hasn't really caught on in Australia. They play the competition midweek, and they've been playing these games to virtually empty stadiums. So I really don't know why our fans haven't really supported and embraced this competition. I had the opportunity to attend some of Melbourne Victory's performances in the Asian Champions League the last few seasons, and they kept on getting really, really poor turnouts. And Sydney FC also struggled for crowds as well. So I'm really mystified why this tournament hasn't captured the imagination of soccer-loving supporters in this country. From a competition point of view, it's a huge shame that our players aren't going to be pitting their wits against the Asian sides that recruit South American players, because they have unlimited budgets, whereas
Shanghai,
we're constrained.
you know, all the Chinese.
Yeah, exactly. We're constrained by budgets, which is
salary caps.
A little bit anachronistic that we still have a salary cap, yet these other freewheeling, big spending Asian clubs can buy.
And you normally say this is the opportunity to develop also young players, that they can play even if they are not playing on a national team level, but in between they can, do the next step and then say, at least on the Champions League level, and get that experience there. But it will be an interesting space to watch. Gentlemen, we just need to take another quick break. You're watching A-League Access. Welcome back to A-League Access. Just moving away from the A-League for a moment, because the Socceroos have progressed to the next round of qualifiers for Qatar 2022. How do you think they will go, George?
Well, they breezed through their World Cup qualifying matches in the early part of June, and they have uncovered some players that will add depth to the squad. It was fantastic to see that some of the Australian A-League boys got an opportunity. James McLaren, one of your favourite players, John, who of course scored 25 goals in a fantastic campaign for Melbourne City. Great to see that he was rewarded. Even the Sydney boys, Ryan Grant got a call up. And
Andrew Redmayne, the goalkeeper.
Andrew Redmayne. So it's great that the Australian boys have been, or the A-League boys have been rewarded for their performances. It bodes well for the squad that they can add some depth. We still have, of course, youngsters like Daniel Arzani to come back in, Tommy Rogic, Aaron Moy. So all of a sudden, we have a bulging squad that we can choose a good starting 11 from.
John?
In terms of how they're going to go in the next phase, there are questions there. Is the squad good enough to qualify straight for the World Cup, or will they have to do it via playoff, like last time when Ange Postecoglou took over the Australian job? He got him through just with a lot of criticism from the media against Honduras. So this time, and also questions got to be asked with Graham Arnold's coaching record in regards to the national team, and club record. Record speaks for itself. Sydney's had success, Central Coast has had success, but for a national coach, there are questions there. He's had previous stints, and he was more like a caretaker coach. But is he the man to take Australia to? Because ultimately, he's going to get judged on, whether he takes them to the World Cup. I mean, that's basically the be-all and end-all. So, there's going to be tough matches coming up. The draw is yet to be done for the next phase of the Asian qualifiers.
That's what I wanted to say. So just to point that out, the format now, so we are waiting the draw for the 1st of July. So Australia is one amongst 12 teams that are now through to this third round, and then they will be split up in 2 groups, 6 each, and then they play against each other twice, but highly likely this is happening against in a bubble, probably so from September onwards, which means Australia might lose its biggest advantage, which is facing these top teams of Asia, like Japan, like Iran, like South Korea at home, where we always played very well, right? Your thoughts on that we, in particular, I think for Australia, we had this discussion in the past, but I think it's particular for Australia, it's a massive disadvantage not to play at home.
Well, not only that, but another massive hurdle for Australia, and indeed every other team, to be fair, is of course the COVID environment we're living in. The travel arrangements, the playing arrangements, getting training schedules mapped out, getting friendlies organised as well. So it's a huge logistical challenge because of this COVID environment we're living in. And all we can do is just, I hate to use the cliche, but take it one game at a time.
Yeah. But it might also, and the problem that the A-League, if they really start in November, right? We were just talking about how good it is to see some A-League players, but if that starts really in November, Graham Arnold already said, should I really then choose players that don't have the competition fitness yet? Because if they don't start until November, I can't choose these players in September, October. And somebody like Matthew Leckie, for example, right? Came back now to the A-League, so that looks a little bit like a step back rather than a step forward.
Yeah, well, Jamie McLaren, we touched on a moment ago, he's been a fantastic performer all season, and he's been heavily promoting the A-League to expat Aussies, saying it's a great competition to come back to, please come and support it. That's all good and well. We want a strong A-League, but we also want a strong Socceroos squad. Yeah. So if these players, as you say, Bernd, if their seasons are out of kilter with the international calendar, Graham Arnold has a huge selection dilemma on his hands.
Yeah. And the Socceroos need to finish first or second in that group. I mean, if they become third, then there might be some, as we had in the past, intercontinental playoffs, but we would like to avoid that. So it will be interesting. And then we have the Olyroos as well. What do you think, John, when we look into the Olympic Games now?
Well, the Olyroos, just like every other country, it's a breeding ground for potential stars. It's a production line. So how's our production line looking? Well, we have a few players that are probably in the frame. We've got hopefully Nathaniel Atkinson. Well, I'm a City person, so hopefully Nathaniel Atkinson gets his chance to have a full pre-season and hopefully force his way into the squad if he's not there already. So hopefully he can push for selection, because our defence needs all the help it can get. The results can mask deficiencies in our team. So defence is where successful campaigns are built. So yeah, Nathaniel Atkinson, hopefully Najareen can sort of push for selection. Connor Metcalf, hopefully he can take that next step and start putting pressure on the established team. Hopefully we can sort of build a different generation. Hopefully the rebuild and the platform building can
Another
commence.
golden generation, you're hoping, John?
Well, hopefully maybe a silver or a bronze one, I mean, hopefully at least half of it, You can't get to those heights, These things happen once in a while. You go look at other national teams like Portugal, where they had their golden generation, with the under 23s, their success there. So hopefully there's some sort of springboards there to take Australia to qualification. I really hope that.
Fingers crossed, because the competition will be tough at the Olympic Games, playing Argentina, playing Portugal, and playing Egypt. I want to end with something positive in terms of the new TV contracts for next season. I think that's really something very exciting for Australian football, that Paramount and Channel 10 have stepped in now, and they will broadcast and cover the A-League, the Socceroos, the Matildas. What's your thought on that, George?
It's fantastic for the sport to get free-to-air coverage. And there was a worry at one point that we're losing a number of corporate sponsors, we're going to lose broadcast partners. So well done to Channel 10 for stepping in at the I don't know if it's the 11th hour and supporting the code, but it's been it's come at a really crucial time in the sport, in our code. So Paramount Plus taking on the pay TV rights. So I assume that Channel 10 will do the one live game per week, and Paramount Plus taking on the pay-per-view or pay TV rights, and they'll have the bulk of the fixture on their platform. But great to have the league airing on a media station.
Well, like I mentioned earlier on, the hostile media landscape is becoming a bit more accommodating, so hopefully that it provides an impetus to lift the crowd averages. I personally would have liked to see maybe 2 or 3 matches per week and the rest on the paywall, but once a week is better than no times a week, so you take what you're given.
Yeah. Well, thank you both, and that's all for A-League Access this season. Before we go, I'd like to thank Luis Freeman and Mike Young for all their work on the show, our producer Santina Cortella, and our co-hosts Gabriel D'Angelo and John McGoran. For more information about A-League Access, go to our Facebook page. And thank you, John Alamanos.
Thank you, Bernd.
And thank you, George Grosios.
Thank you, Bernd.
And yeah, good luck to Melbourne City and Sydney FC in the grand final. I'm Bernd Merkel, and thank you for watching us. See you next season.
A-League Access brought to you by Barry Plant.